Hey sis, each month inside Entrusted Women University, we feature a brand new interview. You can watch the full interview only in Entrusted Women University, but you can check out this snippet right now.
I think, I talk about in the book about becoming pregnant, and having my son at 19 while being in the church, and the impact that experience had on my courage and confidence, right? And before anyone throws the church under the bus, like it had very little to do with how my church treated me. There was much love, grace, and acceptance within my church. It just had to do with me. There was an infraction in how I saw myself. There was an infraction in how I saw my future. And so that experience, it shut me up and it shut me out of a lot of things. And so, that 19 to 40 plus, like my entire, last 20 some years have been a grand unboxing. It has.
Well, hello, Entrusted Women. I am so excited to be with an old friend for me, but a new friend for some of you, Nicole Salmon. How you doing?
I am so good. I'm so excited.
Y'all, if you don't know Nicole, you are in for a treat. So let me just give you a snippet of her bio, and then we're going to jump into some questions for Nicole because she has a new book. What?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So yes, we're going to talk all about it. Nicole O'Salmon is an author, speaker, and pastor. Before launching her coaching firm, Nicole worked with organizations serving communities experiencing marginalization, blah, 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 for over 20 years. Nicole is a certified life skills and marriage coach with a bachelor's degree in Christian ministry and certifications in adult learning and cognitive behavioral therapy. Why did I not know this? How many times have I read your bio? Together with her husband, Evan, I'm saying his name right?
Close enough. Avon.
Yvonne.
Yeah.
And their 5 children, she lives a full and purpose filled life in Brampton, Ontario. Wow, Nicole, oh my gosh, I don't think I knew half of this stuff about you. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You're a busy woman.
Very.
So I know I have interviewed you about branding. I've
Mhm.
interviewed you about the purpose coach that was pre-author
Yeah.
purpose coach, but now you are post author.
Yes.
So I would love to just talk to you about the journey. Any
Mhm.
reflections that you have in terms of transitioning from, all that you experienced, not being published, and really working on your brand and growing your coaching firm, and then becoming an agented author, going through the process of writing the manuscript or the book proposal, then getting a contract, then
Yeah.
writing a book and all that comes with it. So I just love to get your reflections on that.
Yeah. Like I don't know why, but just listening to you kind of run down the timeline, I started to feel a little teary eyed because
Yeah.
it's a lot. It's a lot. And I think my reflection is that I have a new and or renewed appreciation for time, like process time, I remember, Kia, when the announcement of your book deal was made, and then it was like coming in, like, and it was like 3 years after, and I was like, it's like, I'm like, what on earth could they be doing with a book for 3 years? Well, now I know. Now I know, right? Like, and it's like making wine, and that appreciation for time and that winemaking, if you want to call it, like it doesn't just apply to the book process, but it applies to all the things you just mentioned, the building of the brand, the doing all of the things. Sometimes we want it like that, but this process of, from the deal to even the writing and the refining of the book, like, man, like when I read this completed manuscript, the completed book, I'm like honestly, I'm like, this is good.
Yeah, like who wrote this? Who
It's
wrote
yeah,
this?
I'm like, this is good. But the process did that,
Yeah.
the process did that.
Preach,
Yeah.
honey, preach. As you are talking, I'm really thinking about the illustrations that God uses that's found in the Word of God, with
Yeah.
Jesus, the very first miracle that he did was
Yeah.
turning water into wine.
Yeah.
And then we hear about not putting new wine into old wineskins. And that
Mhm.
analogy is just really vibrant for me as I hear you
Mhm.
talking about the analogy between the book writing process and wine.
Yeah.
So good. Now, in saying that, what advice, what advice, if you can give us a snippet, because I'm sure you have a ton, but what advice would you offer aspiring authors, people that are in the place of, all right, when is it going to be my turn?
Yeah. Um, I would say so. A couple of things come to mind, depending on where you are in that whole process. Here's that word again. Number one, the oil is in the outline. Friend, listen, I, myself included, and so many women that I've now had the opportunity to coach towards their writing journey, shy away from wanting to write an outline. Like people just want to be like, I just want to write when I'm inspired and let know. Like the absolute oil is in the outline. Like it's such a powerful tool. It takes discipline to kind of think that way if that's not how your brain is naturally wired. But it was the game changer. And because you just don't know when you're finished, you don't know where you're taking people if you don't have an outline. And so the outline was the thing I constantly went back to. So I would say if you're just starting out and you're thinking through your concept, like really, you can jump on YouTube. I'm sure Entrusted Women's University probably has some resources too on outlines. Like the oil is in the outline. If you started writing, I would say for me, a benefit was writing within a community of other writers. So I joined a boot camp. The goal was to finish your book, I think, in like 21 days. I did not, and I was not disappointed by it because it was still the kickstart that I needed. And there was something about having a disciplined set times in the week where I jumped online, the accountability of and the synergy of being, even though it was virtual, you know what I mean? Like we prayed. If you were stuck, you could jump into a room and talk that through with folks. But literally for the time we weren't saying anything. We were all just faces on, a screen
Mhm.
writing. But being in that community was also a game changer. And lastly, I would say establish a prayer team. Like you're going to need people who are committed to praying you through from the moment you start to the moment that thing hits the shelves. And Kia, you're further ahead of me, so I'm sure you
Beyond.
will talk about the beyond and
And
what's needed for that too. But get an outline, get a community, get a prayer team.
I would almost bump prayer team above that
Yes.
because, and maybe you can attest to this, Nicole, but one of the things I was not aware of was the amount of warfare that is attached. Hey,
Ooh. Ooh.
honey, attached to
Yes.
the process.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's some new demons, some new, I don't know, that are just assigned for
Yeah.
people who are putting the word of God
Yeah.
and marrying that with nonfiction text out into the world.
Yeah.
I've heard it from so many authors.
Yeah. So I
And
don't know if you know this, but there was a time where I literally had to have like my pastors and my prayer team like praying me into health. I received a diagnosis the same year that I started writing the book. And it felt like every time I sat to write, I got sicker and sicker. And I was like, oh no, enemy. Like we were all like, we see what's happening here. It was literally, it felt like a clapback. It felt like I would try to write. I can't move my arm. I'm talking about losing mobility from like my neck down. I couldn't even like use my arms to type. I was trying to use voice to text. Like, so when you talk about, and again, this is not to scare anyone, but I think it's more to say, yeah, just be on the lookout. Like, I was always, not that I was looking out for the enemy, but I was, when I say on the lookout, I knew that if stuff were starting to turn up with the kids, I'm like, I see you, right? And that meant we turned up the prayer. If it looked like there was dissension with me and my husband, I'm like, we see you, we expected this, let's turn up the prayer, right? So I think just again, not to scare anyone into, oh my gosh, this is why I don't want to say yes. No, no, no. It's just you weapon up like that. You're right. Move it to the top of the list because we weapon it up. Like we whatever your, you know, your tool of choice is, we're weaponing up in the area of prayer and covering, because this is not just, we're not just writing a tale of sorts. Like this is a message that God wants to get to his people through your writing. And writing and publishing a book is such a great medium for me for reaching a large amount, a vast amount of people, right? And so, yeah, the enemy, he's gonna clap back and do what he does, but we're here, baby, we here, baby.
So true, you know, and honestly, I echo what you're saying in terms of not attempting to scare people, but really, you cannot pursue the purposes of God
Period.
without expecting warfare. So,
Period.
I mean, we talk about writing a book, but that's with anything. If you're going to
Yeah.
start a ministry, a nonprofit, a
Yeah.
business, you know, it's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming. So,
Mhm.
thank you for that. What is your hope for the book Courage and Confidence? And talk about the title. What's your hope for that?
Yeah, so my hope is, and I always say this sounds ambitious, but this is genuinely what I see, what I desire, what I believe God desires is like a global disruption and mobilization. And what I mean by that is that there are so many of God's daughters and even his sons who may pick this book up that are misaligned with who God has created them to be. And if we have a fighting chance at being fruitful and effective and having impact, we have to get back to who God has created us to be and do life from that place. And so that's the mission of the book, and that's why I called it like a global disruption. Like it's going to disrupt things. Like if God's people start to get in their rightful place, like that's disruption and mobilization on its greatest level. There's a quick story that I talk about in the book where I was talking about when I was in the backyard with the hose and I was watering, you know, one day, and all of a sudden the water started to like slow down to a trickle. And I thought, oh, maybe my husband like was turning off the water at the other end and didn't realize that I wasn't done. And so I followed the hose, you know, back, and on my way to its source, I realized that what happened was, you know, in the process of moving and dragging the hose along, it got bent, right? And so because of the bend in the hose, the water pressure had dropped on the other end. And that is just such a great picture of where so many of us are in our faith walk and in the church. Like in the process of moving along, like life has bent us, life has, you know, kind of twisted us a little bit. And so the impact on the other end isn't as great. But of course, we know you untie that, you loose that up, and all of a sudden the water comes out with such force. And my prayer is that as people are reading this and going through it, that there is going to be such a visible and felt impact in the church and in the earth.
That's so good. You know, and when you think about all the types of bends that you could experience in life, the list is virtually endless. You could have a bend in a relational bend or a
Mhm.
financial bend. You could have a just a deep hurt bend,
Yeah.
but so I think some people may feel at that bending place is an end, is a
Right.
period,
Right.
and it's not. You can become unbent,
Yes.
and you can move forward to pursue the things that God has for you. So I love that analogy. Who do you think would most benefit from this book? I heard you mention women, but then you said and some men.
Yeah,
So
like so of course, like my audience is women, the book's all things pink, and the language in the book is, I'm very much talking to my sisters, right? But there are some men who follow me. There are some men who have already gotten their hands on the book, and they're just like, thank you. But I'm speaking to women when I think about who would benefit most from this book, and I describe her right out the bat in the introduction. Like I say, like, this is to the woman who, as insightful as you are, you still have moments where you ask yourself, who am I and what has God created me to do? And so this is for the woman who, even in her, greatest moments of clarity, she still desires reassurance, and she's searching for permission to allow herself to trust what God is revealing to her in this season, and the permission to chart maybe a new course.
I love that, and I can certainly attest to feeling like I'm on purpose. I'm doing the things that I believe God called me to do. But honey, I still have times where I'm like, wait a minute,
Mm-hmm.
are you sure, God?
Yeah.
Are you sure you didn't mean to pick somebody else? Or I'm just uncertain, or I don't feel confident, or maybe I'm dealing with comparison, and so I feel like we all can use reassurance.
Yes.
We all can use just a course correction. It doesn't matter where we are in our lives. We all can benefit from finding the courage and the confidence to pursue our purpose. Would you say that to be true?
Absolutely. And I wrote the book from that place. Like, I wrote it, like, it's not like, that was good, and then you kind of pass it on to someone else or put it down. Like, the concept of unboxing it's something that it's a place, it's a resource, and it's a tool, and it's a practice and a discipline that we need to acquire, because, like you said, we get bent out of shape all the time. And I always say, like, people might listen to this interview and feel so clear and focused, and then by the time they get to the end of their coffee, the questions come back. Like, it just doesn't stop. And so having a resource to help you
Yeah.
unbox and move through that, like, I feel I wrote it to prayerfully be timeless.
And you did. And one of the things I really like about your book is that you peel back the layers on your own life, and you share some times of some vulnerable times, because we know you now. You've been the purpose coach for many, 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 many years.
Yeah.
You're such a polished individual.
Mhm.
Everything is very intentional, and you have meticulous attention to detail. But that wasn't always you're like, no, no, it wasn't. I said that wasn't always you. So can
Yeah.
you talk a little bit about, without spoilers,
Yeah. Yeah.
for people that are gonna get that book, but
Yeah.
just talk a little bit about you having to find your own courage and
Yeah.
your own confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think I can spoil it, because there really are so many stories and personal accounts in the book. But I think, if I'm to pinpoint what kind of propelled, like, the junction of this courage and confidence, I think, I talk about in the book about becoming pregnant, and having my son at 19 while being in the church, and the impact that experience had on my courage and confidence, right? And before anyone throws the church under the bus, like, it had very little to do with how my church treated me. There was much love, grace, and acceptance within my church. It just had to do with me. there was an infraction in how I saw myself. There was an infraction in how I saw my future. And so that experience, it shut me up and it shut me out of a lot of things. And so, that 19 to 40 plus, like my entire, last 20 some years have been a grand unboxing.
Hey sis, I hope you enjoyed that interview snippet, and I want you to be sure and check out Entrusted Women University by visiting membership.entrustedwomen.com to see the interviews in their entirety. And join us next week for more content to help you on your writing and speaking journey.